Hey everyone. I want to talk about my journey from being a conservative, Republican, hardcore, Donald Trump supporting MAGA person to disavowing him and becoming more liberal and actually supporting and voting for Kamala Harris. Now, she was the first Democrat that I've ever voted for. And if you guys remember, I made a video, I think it was back in 2016 when Donald Trump announced to run for president, that I was actually not for him. I didn't really like what he was doing. I didn't like the way that he spoke. And, I think I made a video about it and just said, I don't believe that this is like, that this person is like following the teachings of Jesus. And I actually aligned myself more with Ted Cruz at the time because I thought that he actually was more like professional, more decent. He wouldn't respond in kind, he wouldn't bully. At least that's what I thought of at the time, and I think that observation was correct. And so, once Donald Trump basically hammered Ted Cruz into the ground during the debates, at my job, there was a guy who would come in and he more or less kind of convinced and talked me into listening to Donald Trump and watching his rallies. And even though I was like not really for him and I really felt disgusted by how he conducted himself and by the things that he said and how he treated other people, I kind of just pushed that to the side and I bought into the whole Make America Great Again thing, and I bought into all the stuff that he said, like how America's getting ripped off and we gotta get rid of all of these immigrants because they're all criminals. I literally bought into all of like the propaganda that he would spew forth. And it seemed to resonate with me because I thought, well, hey, he is not a politician. He's a businessman, so maybe he'll do good for the country. Now, I was quite naive back then because I never did really a thorough research into his background. And even though I had heard that he had some businesses that were failures and he had, his businesses had filed bankruptcy, I kind of just pushed that to the side and I rationalized it away because that's kind of what they do when you're in that, Trump world. They all have their own rationalizations and they, just basically just dismiss a lot of the serious allegations about Trump. They just kind of, sweep them away like they don't even exist. And they kind of try to just justify everything, right? Well, that's more or less what I did, My biggest problem was that I compromised on my values as a follower of Jesus. Here I am, I say on my YouTube channel and to other people that I know and meet in my life that I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus. I'm a Christian. And yet, even though I knew the stuff that Donald Trump was saying and how he was behaving was wrong, I compromised it. And I thought, well, we don't need to have a pastor. We don't need someone like that as a president, And he'll do good for the country. He'll be good, even though he's clearly corrupt and he does all kinds of bad things and he's evil and he's got sexual allegations. We'll just push that to the side and we'll support him, because he's going to make America great again. He's going to do all these great things. So I compromised on my core values as a Christian. And that's the first time that really in my life I lost integrity. Because I couldn't look someone straight in the eyes if they questioned me and were like, hey, Sam, you say that you're a follower of Jesus. How can you be supporting someone like Donald Trump. And I couldn't ever give a real good answer. All I would do is I would rationalize it and justify it. And it was awful because I didn't have integrity. I couldn't walk the straight and narrow path. I couldn't honestly tell somebody, yeah, you're right. I'm not supposed to support that kind of thing. And it does something to you. It really does. And not only did it start, causing me to lose integrity, I think it started corrupting me too. Because I started looking down on liberals. I would make fun of liberals. I would make fun of Obama. I would make fun of Biden. I would make fun of Hillary. I was doing the very thing that Jesus says not to do. I was looking at all of these other people, okay? All of the liberals. They're just snowflakes. They're just triggered. They're all demons. They're all trans and gay, and I must hate them because they're not like me. And, that's the kind of stuff that I grew up into and was drilled into my brain. And, I'll be honest that I kind of always felt like that was wrong. But because the other Christians were doing it, I kind of just went along with it. But that's not being consistent. That's not actually following Jesus and what he said for us to do and how to treat other people. There's a lot of stuff that I've learned. And, the biggest thing really is to love your fellow human being. Love your neighbor as yourself. And you know what helped me? Who's our neighbor? Your neighbor could be somebody next to you that's gay. Your neighbor could be a trans person. Your neighbor could be an atheist. Your neighbor could be an agnostic. Your neighbor could be a Buddhist. Your neighbor could be a Hindu. Your neighbor could be someone that's green. A brown person, a black person. Your neighbor can literally be any kind of person. And we're simply told as Christians to love them. Love them. And how does God love us? He loves us unconditionally. He doesn't put conditions on his love. And we're supposed to be we're supposed to be good witnesses to the rest of the world. And what I've observed is that so many people on the right, they've literally aligned Christianity with the Republican Party. It's like, I don't know, it's like meshed together, assimilated together. And that's horrible because Christianity is not a political party. Jesus is supposed to be your Lord and Savior. He's the one that you're supposed to follow, not some political party, not some president, not some politician, not a businessman, not any of that stuff. Jesus is supposed to be the Savior. He's supposed to be the Creator. He's supposed to be your Lord. You're supposed to be subservient to him. And that's something like when I was following Trump, I put it all on the back burner. Like, it's not that I didn't know, but I compromised. And I was wrong. I was wrong for making fun of liberals. I was wrong for demonizing them. I didn't even know really any liberals. I would just argue with them. I would not treat them kindly or loving. I would just cast judgment and be like, oh, these are all just sinners. They're all going to hell. Like, what a self-righteous attitude that I had. So anyways, I voted for Trump in 2016. And I bought into all of his propaganda. And something that I used to do, I would never watch anything that disagreed with Trump. I would only watch right-wing networks. I would only watch Fox News. I would only watch right-wing podcasters. I would only watch right-wing YouTubers. And anything that disagreed with Trump, I would literally Google and find an answer to it, so that it made me feel better about myself. And I literally believed everything that Donald Trump said was true. I believed that all of the other information was fake news. So basically, anything that disagreed with him, I believed in my mind that it was a lie and that it was fake, and only he had the truth. And now, like, in retrospect, I realize how absurd that is. Like, he doesn't control all of the information. He doesn't have, like, access to the only truth. Like, how absurd to think that one man is telling the truth and everybody else is wrong. How could that be? And that's when, like, the wheels started, spinning in my head. And once 2020 came along and he lost, and I saw what happened at the Capitol, instead of, like, just feeling terrible for the people that were, like, beat up, like the police officers and stuff, I literally just thought that they stole it from Trump and that it must have been rigged, because I only believed what he had said. I never really researched it. I never really looked into it. I didn't even know the certain individuals or the names of these people that had actually gotten beat, and that there was violence that was directed towards these folks. And yes, I literally thought it was all staged, that it was just all, designed to basically steal it against Trump. And I really, in my mind, I created this version of Trump that was just a victim. He's just a victim. Poor Trump. He's so innocent. Everybody hates him. And, I thought, well, if everybody hates him, then he must be right. Without realizing that maybe the reason why a lot of people don't like him, or maybe the reason why the news media is constantly talking about him, is because he's not doing good things. Maybe he's breaking laws. Maybe he's mistreating people. And so they're holding him to account. And in my mind, I thought they were just attacking him because they hated him. Maybe it wasn't because they hated him. Maybe it was because they were holding him to account. Like the way that democracy and the way that things are supposed to work. So, yeah, I just literally bought into all the propaganda. Now, when he was campaigning for 2020, he had made all kinds of promises, like he always does. Like, if I don't win, there's not going to be a country anymore. Joe Biden's going to start World War III. Prices are going to go through the roof. Inflation, like everything is just going to crumble. It's going to be doom. It was this doom and gloom narrative that Trump would pump out there. And he would constantly just demonize the liberals and the Democrats like they're the worst people on planet Earth, and they're just going to destroy our whole entire country and democracy itself. And, his messaging is fear-based. It's very fear-based, but it's also very hate-based. So, after he didn't win, I bought into the whole Mike Lindell MyPillow investigations. I thought, oh no, they're gonna finally figure it out, that it was really stolen. But after everything went to courts, and they had their cases, they found that no, the election wasn't really stolen, and they couldn't find any actual credible evidence. So instead of just being and believing that, I couldn't believe it because I had to believe that everything is just a lie. I can't trust any of the institutions. I can't trust any of the media. I can't trust anything but Donald Trump's word. And that's what my biggest mistake was, is that I was putting all of my trust in Donald Trump. I was following him. I was listening to him and not Jesus. And, I'll be honest, that after Joe Biden went in, and I was upset. I was really upset. Like, I got angry at Mike Pence because I thought, well, why didn't he contest the election? He should have done it, without realizing that all Mike Pence was doing was actually having integrity like a real Christian has, and he wanted to follow the Constitution, And because of that, Trump supporters, Donald Trump, they treated him horribly, to the point where I think they even said, like, they wanted him to be hanged or something. Like, I'm sure that the guy must have gotten death threats. So, it was really bad how they handled that whole situation. But I vividly remember, that I was upset and everything, and this is how I was viewing, liberals and Democrats and stuff. So, after, I would say, like, maybe a year or two into Joe Biden's presidency, I honestly was just getting kind of sick and tired of Donald Trump. I was sick and tired of hearing about all the investigations. I was sick and tired of just him complaining all the time. It's like, can't we just move on from this? Every time he would speak, he would talk about his own personal grievances. And it's just, it was tiring. I mean, the guy makes you feel like worn out because he's just constantly negative and just talking about poor me. You know, they don't like me. They did this to me. These terrible people over here. Like, he doesn't actually put love back into, you know, the country. Every time he goes on to social media, he's constantly putting more hate out into the world by attacking the people that he doesn't agree with. And that's clearly against the teachings of Jesus. You know, that's not loving your neighbor. That's not even loving your enemy. We're supposed to love our enemy. How radical is that? Like, Jesus calls us to an even higher standard, to the point where we're supposed to love our enemy. You know how hard that is? And we can only do that with, you know, Christ in us. Because he has to work through us, and we become more humble. We become more loving. We become more like him. And our light shines forth. But that's not something that's easy at all. You know, it's a hard path. And it's hard to do. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, we're all human. It's very hard to love your enemy, you know? The world says to hate your enemy and to kill your enemy, and here we're told, you know, we're supposed to have compassion and mercy and forgiveness and love and kindness and forbearance, like all these different wonderful things that, honestly, if everybody practiced, the world would be an amazing place. But, you know, when I see what Donald Trump's doing, he's not doing any of these things. And the worst part is, you know, he says, like, he thinks, I guess, that he's, like, chosen by God. And all these Christians surround themselves with him. And they lay their hands on him. And they prop him up like he's some God's appointed, you know, leader or something like this. Which, I'll have to make videos about this because there's a lot of stuff I could talk about. But, you know, I think after, like, a couple or 3 years into Joe Biden's presidency, and I realized, you know, hey, we're still here. There's not World War III. Inflation is actually lower. Things are actually going pretty good. There's a lot of stuff that I believed that simply was not true because of misinformation, right? And there's a lot of misinformation. So that really started clicking in my brain, like, hey, a lot of the stuff that I believed that Donald Trump was saying, it never came to pass. So is it possible that he was just lying to us? And that's when it started to really click. And you know what? If someone lies to you and they say things and they make predictions and this stuff doesn't happen, you know what that does? It causes you to lose trust in that person. And rightfully so. I shouldn't trust somebody that says all this stuff and then it never happens. Why would I continue to follow or trust that person? That wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't be right. So, you know, after all these things started clicking in my mind, and I think that God was actually revealing a lot of this to me as time went on. And I just didn't see this Trump thing being fruitful. I really didn't. Well, basically, what happened was I met someone, and the girl that I'm actually with right now, and she was not a Trump supporter, and, you know, she did not cast any kind of judgment on me when she met me. Like, she knew from reading my profile, like, that I was a Christian, that I was a Republican, that I supported Trump, this and that. And yet she still gave me a chance. And she didn't even say she was a Christian. You know, she said that she was basically an atheist. She grew up Catholic, had a really bad experience. People treated her very horribly. And, you know, I didn't judge her either. I'm like, okay, I want to meet this person. I want to get to know her. And I tried to love her unconditionally, just like Jesus would tell me to do, right? And I know there's Christians out there that are going to try to use these, that one specific verse about you're not supposed to yoke yourself with unbeliever, this and that. Look, we can make a video about that in the future, and I can explain that too, because a lot of that is also misrepresented. But anyways, she literally, confronted me, and she said to me, like, Sam, you seem like a really nice guy. You say that you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus. How can you support someone like Donald Trump? And at first I got defensive, and I threw all of my Trump arguments and all that stuff at her, left and right, but she was able to just obliterate all of them. And I wasn't able to literally answer her because the points that she was making were so concise. They were such good points. And even though I was frustrated and everything, I let it sink in. And I really wrestled with it, some of the stuff she would say. And then I researched some of this stuff. And a lot of this stuff just started making sense to me. And the more and more that I looked into this, and the more that I researched it, and the more that I was listening to stuff that I would never listen to before, I started realizing, wow, Trump is not a good man. He has done so many bad, evil things. And yes, all of us are bad. All of us are evil. But to the point where he is threatening our own democracy, there's just a mile-long list of things. And it's like, whoa, and it's like a light bulb went off into my brain. And, she really helped me see, and it's because of her that I was able to actually get my integrity back as a Christian. Because now I can proudly say that in 2024, I did not support or vote for Donald Trump. And thank God, I thank Jesus for showing me this, and that I was able to actually take a stand for what is right. I don't have to support the cruelty to these human beings that they're doing, and how they're hurting the poor and the marginalized. It's awful. It just, to me, is pure evil. So that's kind of my transformation. And, it was a long journey. It took me quite a few months, I think, for me to finally, make sense of it all, and finally, decide I'm not going to support this anymore. And, I think the other thing, too, was that I found that people on the right are very self-righteous, very judgmental, and the hypocrisy that I would see just stunk like rotten meat. Just absolutely stunk. And what I've come to believe and to realize is that so many people want nothing to do with Christianity because they see the hypocrisy from self-professed believers. They see the hypocrisy from the right. They're not really truly following Jesus. They're not loving their neighbor. They're not helping the poor. They're not loving the immigrant. I mean, one thing after the other after the other. You can just check mark off all of the boxes. And yeah, I mean, they got some serious hypocrisy, some serious issues. And I've always hated it. I've always hated it, and I'm just happy now that I can be free from all of that, and that I can actually, try to live my life in accordance with what Jesus wants me to do. I'm not perfect, and I'm never going to be perfect here while I'm alive. But it is in my heart to want to try to do better, to want to be more loving, to want to have an open mind, to, not be self-righteous, and to love, other people that are not like me. to not be casting judgment in stones. And so that's my story, guys. It's been a long time, 10 years really in the making. And, I believe and feel like I've become a much better human being. I'm a much, much more self-sacrificial human being. I'm a much more loving, compassionate human being. And at the same time, I feel like I have more of like a backbone and I have integrity. And I do call people out, and I will hold people accountable that call themselves Christians and went along and supported Donald Trump. And there was no excuse, guys. This is the third time people had to vote for him. I warned people, I gave them information, and it's like they just dismissed it all. They didn't care. Well, we should care. We should care about our fellow human beings. We should care about each other. We should care about our country, guys. So many people are heartless, and we need to have a heart. God, give us a heart to love and to have compassion. And that's my message. I'm going to keep preaching, as much as I can on this YouTube channel. And, I can't convince anyone. I can't change anyone. All I can do is speak truth to power. I can speak the way that I see things. And, maybe God can work with that. And he can change people's lives. And you can see that light, But I just feel like I want to do my part. I want to do what I can. I know I'm only one voice, but I think that one voice can make the difference. I really do. I believe that. And I'm not going to allow anyone to silence me. I'm not going to let Donald Trump silence me. And if it gets to the point where they imprison me or they will threaten me or kill me even, then so be it. I am subservient to Jesus. And I'm never going to stop loving. And, so to hell with Satan, to hell with the demons. They can try all they want, but that's not going to stop me from doing the loving thing. I'm going to speak the truth. I care about my fellow humans. And my message is to all of you that we should work together, we should love one another, we should have compassion, we should have forgiveness, we should have mercy. And with that, I'll catch you in my next video.